it comes to maintaining America's sense of musical history, Mr. Parsons is fighting an uphill battle. Digital and streaming technology from Spotify to Apple have made access easier, but perhaps limited millennials' sense of how American music was born. Mr. Parsons' first step in addressing this was to revive Minton's Jazz Club here in Harlem, since resurrecting Minton's, where Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong played. What is your next step? I mean, clearly you are chairman of the Apollo Theater. You understand that Harlem is more than having a moment. As New York real estate is getting hot, it's only moving north. You can't move any further south. So tell us what exactly is going on here.
Well, there is a revival going on in Harlem right now, and jazz is a big part of it because it was the scene of so much creativity in the 20s, 30s, and 40s around jazz. And right at the center of that scene was a club called Minton's Playhouse, right? Now, Minton's, unfortunately, like so many things in Harlem, burned down in the 70s, and it was shuttered. And notwithstanding a few attempts to sort of reopen it over the last 40 years, it was basically shuttered when we got it a couple of 3 years ago. So we've reopened it, revived it, and what we're trying to do is two things. One, lock into that renaissance that's happening up there in terms of jazz, and capture some of the newer artists, but connect it to the old, connect it to their roots. Because you're right, young people today, they don't get the fact that America's only true contribution to global culture has been jazz.
Hold on a second. One more time?
Yeah, true. Think of another. To global culture. Well, I mean, you could say fast food. I'm talking about performing arts or culture, music and arts. It's been jazz.
But what about the blues? Without the blues, there'd be no rock and roll.
Well, but rock and roll is still uniquely an American experience. Jazz is a global experience. You actually have, yes, sir, yes, sir.
To Keith Richards and Mick Jagger.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, America and England are, you know.
And Motown is American.
We just speak the same language, but no, jazz is global. Jazz is global. And jazz has affected global musical tastes around the world, and it's our contribution to the sort of global cultural ethos. And people have lost sight of how that happened, who that was. It's particularly relevant today, in my opinion. But it's damn good music.
But do people care? So if less and less people, young people, aren't interested in jazz, if there's less jazz musicians coming on the scene, how are you going to lead this charge?
Well, you know, what do people care about? Do they care about things that intrinsically they feel, or do they care about things they're told to care about? I think a little bit of both. We're telling them, or we're trying to be a part of the group that's telling them, you ought to care about this. This is important. This is part of your heritage. This tells you something about who you are and where you came from.
And people love live events right now.
They do. Dick, is Harlem the next Brooklyn?
You know what? I'm from Brooklyn, so I know. So I can accept that. Yes. Yes. And in fact, the people up in Harlem know it. They have looked at what's happened in Brooklyn. They say, wait a minute. Those guys, they got the jump on us. They took control of their community, and they're investing in their community. They're rebuilding their community. We need to do the same.
Then how are you going to help locals not get priced out?
Well, one thing is we're giving them jobs. You know, we're giving them jobs. Because the problem with Harlem was it was economically hollowed out. So nobody who lived there could even work there because there were no jobs. So, for example, in our place, 70% of our employees come from the neighborhood.
See?
Now they've got money.
I knew I was moving uptown for a reason. Dick, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
What an honor. The one and only Dick Parsons here on Market Makers.